A Lesson Before Dying by Ernest J. Gaines, Chapter 12. I knew Miss Emma expected me to come back and tell her all about Jefferson, but I had not thought of a good lie yet. I couldn't go there and tell her what had really happened. That would have hurt too much. I couldn't go there and say that we had had a good talk. She probably wouldn't have believed it, not after the way he had acted when we were there together. I needed time to think of something. Not a big lie, just a little lie, or a number of little lies, but a lie it had to be. Maybe I could tell her he was concerned about her health. She would like that. Maybe I could tell her he had begun to use the brush and comb I had bought for him. Or maybe I could say that the deputy had told me what a good prisoner he was, and that the sheriff himself had said he was a good boy. I needed time to get my lies straight, and the best place for that was at the Rainbow. I got into my car and drove back of town. The Rainbow Club was quiet, dark and quiet. There were only two old men in the place besides Joe Claiborne, who was behind the bar. All three stood talking baseball. Jackie Robinson. Robinson had just finished his second year with the Brooklyn Dodgers. "What's happening, Prof?" Claiborne said to me. "A Jacks," I said. He brought the bottle of beer to me. "A little business in town," I said. Claiborne could see that I didn't want to talk about the business, or maybe he realized what the business was. He nodded his head and went back down the bar where the other customers were. The two old men had continued their conversation, and Claiborne joined them again, as if he had never left. From where I stood, about halfway down the bar, all I could hear was Jackie this and Jackie that. Nothing about any of the other players, nothing about the Brooklyn Dodgers as a team. Only Jackie. Jackie this and Jackie that. I sipped my beer slowly while listening to them, and they were very good. They could recall everything Jackie had done in the past 2 years. They remembered when he got his first hit and who it was against. They remembered the first time he stole 2 bases in one game and the first time he stole home. One of the men backed away from the bar to demonstrate how slow the pitcher was in throwing the ball, which gave Jackie the opportunity to steal home plate. The old man looked over each shoulder, as pitchers do when there are runners on bases. He raised his leg as high as he could, which is only about a foot off the floor, to show how much time the pitcher took to throw the ball to the plate. While the pitcher went through the motion of raising his leg and winding his arm, Jackie was on his way home. Now the old man became Jackie, not running, but showing the motion of someone running at full speed. His arms were doing what the legs could not do. He showed you the motion of Jackie sliding into the plate, the motion of the umpire calling Jackie safe, and the motion of Jackie brushing off his clothes and going into the dugout. The old man nodded his head emphatically with great pride and went back to the bar. Claiborne and the other old man told him that he was exactly right. Listening to them, I could remember back to the time before Jackie came to the major leagues, when it was Joe Louis that everyone talked about. Yes, I could remember. I could remember when he was the only one, especially the big fight with Schmeling, that German. I could still remember how depressed everyone was after Joe had lost the first fight with Schmeling. For weeks it was like that. To be caught laughing for any reason seemed like a sin. This was a period of mourning. What else in the world was there to be proud of if Joe had lost? Even the preacher got into it. Let us wait, children. David will meet Goliath again. And everyone told everyone else they gon' meet again. Just wait. And we waited, and finally the big fight did come. There were 2 radios in the quarter, one at the Williams house, down the quarter, another at the McVeighs, up the quarter. I was down the quarter. I was 17 then. I was not the youngest, nor surely the oldest. I was just one, praying and hoping for the only hero we knew. There was much noise, much talking, while the people waited for the fight to begin. Once the announcer said that the fighters were in the ring, everyone became silent, without anybody having to tell them to do so. There were small children there too, but even they had quit playing and were silent. We held our breath, remembering the first fight. Could God let it happen again? Would He let it happen again? Then it was over, and there was nothing but chaos. People screamed, some shot pistols in the air. There were mock fights. Old men fell down on the floor, as Schmeling did, and had to be helped up. Everybody laughed. Everybody patted everybody else on the back. For days after that fight, for weeks, we held our heads higher than any people on earth had ever done for any reason. I was only 17 then, but I could remember it. Every bit of it. The warm evening, the people, the noise, the pride I saw in those faces. Now, while I stood there listening to the old men in their praise of Jackie Robinson, I remembered something else. The little Irishman. I was at the university then. The little Irishman was giving a series of lectures at white universities, but some way or another our university got him to visit us. How? Only God knows, but we were all gathered in the auditorium, and there stood this little white man with a thick accent talking to us about Irish literature. He spoke of Yeats, O'Casey, Joyce, names I had never heard before. I sat there listening, trying to remember everything he said. And a name he repeated over and over was Parnell. And he told us how some Irishman would weep this day at the mention of the name Parnell. Parnell, Parnell, Parnell. Then he spoke of James Joyce. He told about Joyce's family, his religion, his education, his writing. He spoke of a book called Dubliners and a story in the book titled Ivy Day in the Committee Room. Regardless of race, regardless of class, that story was universal, he said. For days after the lecture I tried to find that book, but it was not in our library and not in any of the bookstores. I went to Mr. Anderson, my literature teacher, and asked him if he knew how I could get a copy. He said he would see what he could do. A week later he kept me after class and handed me a collection of stories. It was not Joyce's Dubliners, but an anthology of short stories, with Ivy Day in the Committee Room included as one of them. Mr. Anderson had gotten a professor at the White University to check the book out of his library for him. He's a pretty decent fellow, Mr. Anderson said about the white professor. And always remember that. Now take care of that book, you can keep it a week. And it had better come back to me in the same condition in which it left. You do understand me, don't you, Wiggins? I read the story and reread the story, but I still could not find the universality that the little Irishman had spoken of. All I saw in the story was some Irishmen meeting in a room and talking politics. What had that to do with America, especially with my people? It was not until years later that I saw what he meant. I had gone to bars, to barber shops, I had stood on street corners, and I had gone to many suppers there in the quarter. But I had never really listened to what was being said. Then I began to listen closely to how they talked about their heroes, how they talked about the dead and how great the dead had once been. I heard it everywhere. The old men down at the end of the bar were still talking about Jackie Robinson, but I was not thinking about Jackie now, or Joe Louis, or the little Irishman. I was thinking about that cold, depressing cell, uptown. I raised my hand for Claiborne to bring me another beer. He gave me the bottle and looked into my eyes, and he could tell that I didn't feel like talking. So we went back down the bar to where the old men were still talking baseball. I didn't want to think about that cell uptown. I didn't even want to think about Miss Emma and the lies I had to tell her. I wanted to think about more pleasant things. I thought about Vivian. Now there was not a more pleasant thing in the world to think about. Today was Friday, wasn't it? And wouldn't it be nice if the two of us could go somewhere and spend the entire weekend? Wouldn't that be nice? I would be able to forget the whole thing for at least a couple of days. Damn it, it would be so good if we could go away and never come back. I knew I could find a job doing something else, and so could she. If we could just get the hell away from here. Just go away. The old men down the bar continued to hit the ball, throw the ball, and slide into bases. And my mind went back to that cell uptown, then to another cell somewhere in Florida. After reading about the execution there, I had dreamed about it over and over and over. As vividly as if I were there, I had seen that cell, heard that boy crying while being dragged to that chair. Please, Joe Louis, help me. Please help me. Help me. And after he had been strapped in the chair, the man who wrote the story could still hear him cry, Mr. Joe Louis, help me. Mr. Joe Louis, help me. And down the bar the old men went on hitting the ball, running the bases, and sliding home. And I wondered if the one in that cell uptown would call on Jackie Robinson as the other one had called on Joe Louis. Taking off, Prof? Claiborne asked me. I have to find my lady, I said. Take it easy, Prof. I waved my hand to the old men. They nodded to me. The school was 3 or 4 blocks away on the main street, but everything back here was pretty close to everything else. The school was on the same street as the Catholic church, the movie theater, the mortuary, a cafe, and the ice cream parlor. The grocery store was not far from the church, but on another street. The barber shop and a gas station weren't too far from the mortuary. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew everybody else's business. I parked in front of the movie theater and watched one of the teachers direct the children onto the school bus. When the bus drove away, I got out of my car. What's happening, handsome? The teacher said. What's going on, Peggy? Thank God it's Friday, she said. She's still inside. Having a drink later? A couple, Peggy said. As we walked up to the entrance of the school, I saw 2 boys taking in the flag. Peggy told me she would see us at the club later, and I went to Vivian's classroom. The school had only 5 rooms, and in some the classes were doubled. Vivian taught the 6th and 7th grades. The children had all gone, and she sat behind her desk looking over papers. She wore a brown woolen suit and a white blouse. She didn't raise her head until I was near the desk. Then she smiled. She had the most beautiful and most even teeth I had ever seen. But I thought every bit of her was perfect. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "You ever know on a Friday I could stay away from you?" I went around the desk and kissed her. "The last boy stood at this desk wouldn't dare do that," she said. "I better not ever catch anyone else doing it," I said. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "To see you. What else?" She looked up at me, and she could read my face, and she knew that I had been at the jail. "Still working?" I asked. "Nothing I can't do later. I saw Peggy. They were going over for a drink." "Sounds like a good idea," Vivian said. She put some papers into a briefcase and stood up. "I have to see the principal before she leaves. Do you know how to clean a blackboard?" "I've done a few. If you do a good job, I'll give you an apple," she said. "Thanks, teacher." She kissed me lightly on the lips and walked away. At the door, she looked back and smiled again. A vertical line had been drawn down the blackboard. On one side of the line were French sentences, on the other side English translations. They were simple sentences. "Where is the book? Where is the tablet? Where is the pencil?" I wiped both halves clean, but you could still see the imprint of the sentences. I drew another vertical line, and on one side I wrote, "Je t'aime, je t'aime, je t'aime." And on the other side I wrote, "I love you, I love you, I love you." Vivian came back into the room and saw what I had done. "You naughty boy," she said. "Suppose Daisy sees that. Doesn't she already know? I ought to make you stand in the corner on one foot. If you stood there with me, I wouldn't mind." "Naughty, naughty boy," she said. "Erase that. Only if you kiss me first." She had picked up the briefcase, and I took it from her and laid it on the desk, and I pulled her into my arms. "Let's go somewhere, just the 2 of us," I said, after kissing her. "Let's go somewhere and spend the night. Baton Rouge, New Orleans, anywhere." "My babies," she said. "Dora will look after them. Come on, let's go somewhere. We're having a drink with Peggy, remember? Let's forget Peggy and everybody else. Let's go somewhere." I could see that for a moment she was thinking about it. Then she shook her head. "No," she said, "I can't take that chance." "Don't you want to?" "More than anything." "Then let's take the chance." "No," she said, "I can't give him an excuse to take my babies." "You think he would?" "I don't know. I can't take that risk. I hate going to Robert and Helen's, then leaving in the middle of the night." "I hate it too," she said, "but staying overnight somewhere, I can't take that chance." "Where is he now?" "Last I heard, in Houston." "When's he coming back?" "I don't know. Until he makes up his mind, we just do nothing. I thought we did a lot. You know what I mean. Come on, let's go find Peggy and them and have a drink. Not until I get another kiss." "What is the matter?" she said after we had kissed. Maybe it was the way I had held her. Maybe it was the look in my face. I told her what had happened at the jail, how Jefferson had gotten down on his knees to eat the food out of the paper bag. I saw her frown, and she brought her hand up to her mouth. I have to go back to that old woman. But I couldn't go back then. I couldn't face her then. I needed some time to think of a lie to tell her. With her hand still over her mouth, Vivian was looking at me. I wish I could just run away from this place. Vivian shook her head. "You know you can't." "Why not?" "For the same reason you haven't done it yet. I've wanted to, but you haven't. Why? You know the answer yourself, Grant. You love them more than you hate this place. Is it love or cowardice? Afraid to take a chance out there? You have your folks in California. You can always go to them. I have thought about it many times." "Sure," she said. "You even did it once, but you came back. This is all we have, Grant." "I want more." I turned away from her and erased the blackboard. "Well, let's go have that drink," I said. "Wait," Vivian said. She went up to the board and wrote in large letters, "Je t'aimerai toujours, je t'aimerai toujours, je t'aimerai toujours." "And suppose old Daisy comes in here before you get back on Monday." "She already knows about it," Vivian said. "So do all the rest, teachers and students."